This video was made possible by the EA Creator Network and was captured on a work-in-progress build. What's up everybody, it's E4 and today we're going to get a head start on our College Football 26 Dynasty Mode rebuilds as we build a meta ultimate recruiter build where we are going to be able to make a coach that can dominate the recruiting board, that can dominate the transfer portal so that you can stuff your roster full of all the elite dev trait gems you could possibly handle to turn your dynasty into an absolute powerhouse. So I thought the perfect place to start with our ultimate recruiter coach build is in North Carolina with their new head coach, Chill Belichick. To show you guys this recruiter build, I figured let's get our coach to level 100 as they have raised the cap limit for coach levels from 50 in college football 25 all the way up to 100 in college football 26. I found out I don't think you guys need to worry about hitting coach level 100 too quickly in college football 26. I'm level 78 right now. There's 5 years left before this dynasty is over, as there's a 30-year limit for your dynasty modes in college football 26. I'm currently in year 25 of a max 30-year dynasty. Every year, we've had the Coach XP speed setting set to fastest out of all the options, not slowest, the fastest. We have a 279 and 77 record. 17 winning seasons. I'm 33-3 in the playoffs. I have 11 national championships, 5 of which were back to back. I use all that just saying in the background. Technically, you can have up to 1,000 coach points to work with to full out your meta coach skill tree, which through the power of video editing, it will look and appear like we have all 1,000. So I can give you guys the guide. So if you are somehow an absolute college football 26 dynasty sicko and you can get your coach to a level 100, or maybe it's just the early build that I'm playing on that has the XP going a little bit slower than anticipated, and level 100 be a little bit more attainable than waiting all the way to year 25 of a 30-year dynasty to still be, 22 spots off of getting it. It's going to be here. So without further ado, we need to talk about our coordinators. The absolute very first thing you need to do is when you are creating your coach, make sure he is a recruiter for his base archetype. Obviously. The second thing you need to do before you start spending your points all willy-nilly is you need to strategize how you want your OC and DC to work hand in hand with what we're about to make the greatest recruiting head coach of all time. Technically, if you want to go all in, you could go with an OC and a DC that have a specialist in recruiter. That is their primary background because all of these boosts will stack. It will just make you so heavily in the recruit, like you're going to recruit absolutely everybody. You can do that if you want. In my opinion, though, I want my OC and DC to complement what is about to be the greatest recruiting head coach ever. He's going to do all of our recruiting. We're not going to need excessive amounts of recruiting because he is going to be excessive within himself. I want my OC and DC to do the heavy lifting in other areas that we're not going to be investing in because we want to go all in on our coach as a recruiter. So in my opinion, I want one of my coordinators to have his background as a motivator. Get base motivator, unlock master motivator. With these, you get in tier 1 a little bit of help to your recruiting as well, as every time a player at one of these positions hits a skill cap, you're going to get an interest boost for those specific recruits. But ultimately what you want to see is get your way down to tier 3 in base motivator, which is going to require a little bit of time here for your coordinators. But when you do get it, you will get an off-season training boost for all of these positions. Now, it did feel like it was a little RNG what specifically the training boost was in college football 25, and I still don't have a 100% answer as to what the XP boost is in college football 26. But regardless of if it's RNG, if it's some years it's a little bit smaller, some years it's a little bit bigger, how it ties in with the dev trait, an off-season training boost to player overall at the end of the day is an off-season training boost to player overall. So your head coach is going to be finding the best recruits with the best dev traits, and one of your coordinators with motivator is going to do the lifting as far as player development. And then when you can unlock master motivator, as you work your way through this tree, you are going to want to try to get down to tier 3 as fast as you possibly can because it is going to increase all XP gains for every single position throughout the regular season. Every time a player gets specific XP, you're going to get more if you have tier 3 in Master Motivator. So that is why we're going to let one of our coordinators do all of the heavy lifting for player development. I think a viable strategy, honestly, is having both your coordinators be into the motivator tree. Have your head coach be so one-sided into recruiting, and then have both your coordinators be so one-sided into player development. I think the harmony between those two make a lot of sense. But if you don't want to double up and you want to try to diversify, I think an argument could be made that going into Strategist could be the second best complementary specialist for your coordinators to pair with this recruiter room, because within Strategist, we got some real nice abilities here. Now, tiers 1, 3, and 4 in Strategist are just going to help complement what your head coach is going to bring to the table. You're going to get boosts to complimentary visits. Players for all these different positions are going to have lower deal breaker thresholds. And in tier 4 with Mind Reader is always awesome to have an increased chance to learn the dev trait of a player while scouting. You know, you have 3 quarterbacks and you have Mind Reader, and you find out one of those quarterbacks has elite dev, you can directly go for him right away, and it really helps you min-max your hours in recruiting. Very, very crucial. Not as important as in College Football 25, where in College Football 25, players would not go up dev trait. So if you recruited a normal dev player, you were stuck with them as a normal dev. In College Football 26, players can go up dev traits, which makes Mind Reader not as integral, but it still is a huge part of your recruiting. But for my opinion, where Strategist is going to pull its weight and where you're going to be able to stack this coordinator with our head coach build is that tier 2, right? Because visits are going to have a bigger impact on all these different players. Now, depending on how you use your hours and your recruiting strategy in season, I thought, me personally, and a lot of players kind of found the meta in College Football 25 being maybe not bring players in on visits. Maybe your hours were best spent by doing maybe a hard sell approach, by sending the house, spending your hours that way and not relying on visits, because a lot of times visits were late in the season, and if you were relying on a visit, a lot of times other schools would be able to steal them away because you're just waiting for your week 10 visit to happen. So, it may be not the most impactful upgrade for in-season recruiting, but I think hospitality is going to show its value when it comes to the transfer portal. So when, through those 4 weeks of the transfer portal, any players that you really want and any players you want to aggressively try to approach in the transfer portal, you are going to bring them in on a visit every single time. So combining hospitality with a coordinator and your head coach is going to give you that much more of an advantage come the transfer portal, which is revamped in College Football 26. There's a bigger player pool. There's a lot more 4-stars available. You are going to want every advantage you can when it comes to the transfer portal, and Strategist is a great way to do that. Step 1 of the recruiter build is very simple. You are going to want to invest in every single aspect of the base recruiter tree for every single position outside of specialist. And regardless if you're early game, mid game, or late game, every single tier in base recruiter is going to be valuable. Tier 1 for every single position is going to take less time to fully scout each and every one of them, which is very crucial when you're in the preseason, trying to set up your board. If you want to kind of siphon through the trash and the hits and find some early gems, Tier 1 is going to get you there faster. Tier 2 is going to increase the starting interest from all of these different positions, which is always valuable. Tier 3, which is going to give you a big advantage come time with the transfer portal, giving the base across the board positional transfers more interest in joining your program. And then in Tier 4, with the improvement to the sway mechanics in this year's game, sway was confusing last year. I think they nailed it on the head with how they phrased it in the deep dive blog for sway. It felt like it should have been one of the most power tools in my recruiting, but I didn't really know what it was doing. So they clearly probably had the analytics and data from X amount of dynasties and stuff like that to understand not enough people were using sway. And basically what sway does now is if you have a recruit, let's look at this middle picture here, and let's just say, look at this. That's really where you want to bring it home. Your best letter grades are proximity to home. You have playing time, which is one of his already hits, and you have coach stability is an A. This player has no interest in it. It's not helping you out right now. You need to find that X factor, that deciding factor, to get him to pick your school over the previous school. So what you can do with sway is hit it and convince him for your school only that proximity to home and coach stability needs to be a check mark. It needs to be one of his priorities. It needs to be one of his deal breakers. So now you're going to be able to completely manipulate your recruit to fit your board, which now knowing the percentage chances of that hitting, where you can see 2 greens and 1 red, is going to give you a high success rate when those things line up, and to be able to flip a player to make your A stability and your A proximity to home a change only for you it adds a completely different element to the recruiting cycle. And once you sign 2 top 5 recruiting classes, now this isn't necessarily the next step because it's going to take a minute to get those 2 top 5 recruiting classes, but you're going to also want to max out 4 of 4 on every single category on Elite Recruiter outside of Specialist. Now this is a mix of like mid and end game, but tier 1 through 3, you're going to feel that on every given week. So as soon as you can get the first 3 on every single option in Elite Recruiter, I suggest you do it. Tier 1 is going to boost your ideal pitch grades for all these different positions. Tier 2 is going to boost your school grades for all these different positions. Tier 3 is going to make your recruiting actions have a bigger impact on all those different positions, which is huge. Tier 4, however, much like Elite Recruiter itself, being a little bit more endgame because you have to get those 2 top 5 recruiting classes. Tier 4, where it allows you to increase your weekly recruiting hours for all these different positions. That is sick once you have a upgraded bank of hours. But if your school's still working your way up through the prestige system, you're only like a 3-star school, you're probably not necessarily going to have the extra hours when you unlock tier 4 to give up anyways to apply to these different positions. You know what I'm saying? You're probably budget in terms of hours to the max, the absolute limit. So even though you have the ability to go from maybe 50 hours to 75 hours for these different positions, you might not have the actual hour budget within your school to utilize these tiers. So that in itself is super endgame, but I think tiers 1 through 3 are very valuable and get those as fast as you can. The next step is you want to unlock Tactician. Now, Tactician is going to give you boosts for your players in-game to their attributes. That's not really going to help out your recruiting cycle too much, but what you want to do by unlocking Tactician is to spend the 50 points so that you can unlock Strategist. So the boosts that I recommend, I'm just kind of looking for general, what boosts are going to give you the most bang for your buck. So tier 1 in quarterback is going to boost your throw in the run and change of direction. So that's good if you have a dual threat quarterback. The first 2 tiers on blocking are going to boost your pass block, impact block, run block, lead block. That's probably honestly the 2 most valuable that you're going to find. Because again, we're not trying to necessarily boost our team. It helps, but we just at this stage want to spend our 50-point threshold so that we can unlock the strategist tier. So I'm also going to double up here with 2 on the defensive line to boost change of direction and pursuit, as well as finesse move and block shed. Now we are able to unlock the strategist ability. Now within strategist, I personally think it's coming time you got to start to budget your points a little bit. I think the first 2 make the most sense. I'm only going to go single on the running back just because it's only running backs. Quarterbacks are a little bit more valuable. You're getting more positions here with receiver, O-line, D-line, linebackers, and our DBs. And what we're going to get in tier 1 is it's going to boost the complementary visits for all these different positions. So when you bring in 2 players on the same week that work off one another, you are going to get a little bit more of a boost. That's what it is. Again, it does kind of come back to how much is your recruiting strategy involving bringing players on visits. I think that there's, that mix of people like myself that tend to go with the send the house hard sell versus divvying up and budgeting points to bring in players on a lot of different visits to really get the most out of that tier 1. However, in tier 2, visits having a bigger impact on all of these different players, we're pretty much just penciling in strategist as a ability that's going to be very valuable come time of the transfer portal. You already have the recruiting aspect and ability that's going to make more players want to be interested in your school in the transfer portal. And you can bring it home with hospitality because during the transfer portal phase, you absolutely are going to be bringing in your top targets in for visits at some point during those first 3 weeks. Ideally, hell, maybe even the first 2 weeks as soon as you maybe learn an A grade. So being able to continue to buff up the transfer portal, it's 2 phases of recruiting nowadays. It's not just old school where you just got to find all the 4- and 5-star gems from high school. You need to be able to hold your own in the transfer portal, and tier 2 hospitality is going to do that. And now we're going to move into the end game a little bit. Program Builder gets unlocked once you have 5 playoff wins. So it's depending on the state of the program that you are starting with, you could take a little bit to get Program Builder. But once you are able to unlock it, it's going to cost 30 points to unlock. And there are 2 upgrades in here that are integral. I would absolutely prioritize unlocking every aspect of Relationship Builder first, Because in Tier 1, it's going to upgrade your school's best 2 pipelines by 1 tier. Tier 2 is going to upgrade your school's 5 best pipelines by 1 tier. And Tier 3 is going to upgrade your school's 5 worst pipelines by 1 tier. I'm not a math wizard, but that is 12 different pipelines through maxing this out that are going to get improved. I think the other upgrade is you're going to want strong roots, which is going to boost your primary pipeline. Tier 2 is going to boost the starting interest of recruits from your primary pipeline. And Tier 3 hometown discount is recruits from our primary pipeline gain extra influence boost. That is also very overpowered. That is huge and great to invest for the recruiting base. But there's just no way that that is more valuable than getting 12 upgrades overall to your recruiting cycle. So because the budget, these are not cheap upgrades, I would absolutely prioritize fleshing and finishing out relationship builder and then moving on to strong roots second. But both these are gigantic upgrades for the recruiting cycle and huge to help you. And these are going to be the big things that probably take you from getting, consistently classes maybe in the between 10 and 25 range. I think use 3 of 3 for strong roots and relationship builder. It is going to make it that much easier to challenge for the #1 recruiting class in the nation. And then we are on to the final ability upgrade for the ultimate recruiter coach build in college football 26. Once you have won 2 national championships, you get the right to get the CEO ability. Now here's where you can do a lot of work. Depending on your available budget remaining, I would prioritize Dream School as the first upgrade you get in CEO. It's going to give you a chance at an instant commit when offering a scholarship as a player who has you as their top school. So this is where you see all the meme clips from college football 25. This is where you can get 3, 4, maybe even 5. I think that's the most I've personally ever got. 4 and 5-star initial recruits from that preseason recruiting board to commit to your school right away. There is a situation where if you have enough people and players that have you as the #1 school, you could have like the #1 class in the nation for probably half the season, and you get that work all done and accomplished in the preseason. The instant commit, there's not a better feeling than getting an instant commit. So if I had to prioritize a couple of the nice options here in CEO first, depending on your available coach credits, I would go Dream School first. I think lasting impression absolutely is worth upgrading as well. It's going to gain additional interest in your recruits for every 10 hours spent. And when you're chasing the big dogs, the big fish, the 4 stars, the 5 stars, you're probably going to be spending at least 50 hours on them. So any and everything that's going to give you an additional chance at gaining interest from those players is immensely valuable in this build. There's 2 other abilities in CEO that are related to recruiting that you could consider, but I think ultimately it comes down to preference and how you personally like to handle your recruiting, because they are tied to visits, where we have More the Merrier, which increases the number of players you can visit in a week to 8. We also have Last Dance, which is bonus interest for every visit a player has taken before visiting you. Now, if you are someone that's like me, where at least in college football 25, my personal meta was kind of going with the send the house hard sell approach, didn't really rely a whole lot on visits. So those 2, especially for 16 points to unlock them, very expensive for somebody that might not offer the most benefit. So I would personally say these 2 are optional. And if you are a player that heavily relies on visits during your recruiting cycle and how you want to divvy up your hours, those are definitely going to be valuable to you. And I think with any extra credits you may have, I would just fully unlock Strategist. If you are not going to per se want to invest in things that are maybe tied around bringing guys in for visits, because if you can get Tier 3 and Tier 4 on Strategist, Tier 3 is going to have all these different positions to offer a lower deal breaker threshold, which is only going to help you out a little bit in recruiting. You also get the mind reader ability, which is an increased chance to learn the development trait of these players while scouting. Again, not necessarily integral, because in college football 25, player dev trait was the be-all end-all. There was no opportunity for those players ever to go up or down a dev trait, whereas in college football 26, again, talked about it earlier, players can go up and down, so it's not as important to ensure that you're only getting star and elite dev players. But at the end of the day, Mind Reader is only going to be a fun extra bonus. So there you have it, fellas. That is, in my opinion, the meta best recruiting-based head coach build that you're going to have at launch in College Football 26. Now, don't think just because the coach level cap went from 50 to 100 that you're going to be rushing and speed running all your way to 100. If it's anything like I experienced here today, buckle up. It's going to take a little bit. It's a great journey. Enjoy the ride. But if you follow this build, you are going to be, without a shadow of a doubt, the best recruiting coach in the nation. You're going to be able to scout and find all the gems, be it 3, 4, and 5-star. You're going to find all the good dev traits, and with your offensive and defensive coordinator kind of pulling the weight from a player development standpoint, it's going to be perfect harmony, and you are going to take that Cupcake Dynasty into a perennial powerhouse in absolutely no time. So I hope you guys learned something here today. If it is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button as we are just beginning the epicness, which is College Football 26 here on the channel. You want to hop on the wagon before we absolutely start going 700 horsepower upwards and onwards as we absolutely crush it and take over in College Football 26 here on the channel. Leave a comment in the comment section below if there's any other coach builds you want to see. I do plan on releasing a coach build for maximizing player development and player XP, because I think from a rebuilder standpoint, those are really the two directions you should try to consider. One is either figure out a way to dominate recruiting like we did in today's video, or figure out how to dominate player development and getting maximum XP. And that is very, very valuable, and that should be dropping tomorrow. So stay tuned for that one. And until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love ya. Thank you very much for the love and support.